Hello everybody, this is Refresh and I am here to bring you a battle between all 5 Core Set 2020 Planeswalker decks. We're going to be going at it using the Star variant, which means that each player must defeat their 2 opposed colors to win. So for example, let's say Ajani here, who is the white Planeswalker, he must defeat both Sorin and Chandra in order to win the game. Any player who first defeats their 2 opposing players will win the game. There is a potential for a tie in this, but that's just life sometimes. So we're only going to be playing 1 game and we'll be using multiplayer rules, which means that each deck will get 1 free mulligan. We'll start with a roll off to see who goes first. Ajani rolls 4, Muyanling rolls 8, Sorin rolls 8, Chandra rolls 4, Vivian rolls 7. Rolling off between Yanling and Sorin. Yanling rolls 11, Sorin rolls 11, Sorin rolls 4, Yanling rolls 8, and so Yanling will go first. We'll draw 7. Yanling draws a Waterkin Shaman, a Frost Lynx, a Brineborn Cutthroat, an Unsummon, an Island, an Unsummon, and a Brineborn Cutthroat. Even though the costs of these spells are pretty low, we cannot keep this hand, and so we will use our free mulligan. Alright, Yanling's second hand has an Unsummon, a Waterkin Shaman, an Island, Frostlings, a Cloud Conceer, and a Brineborn Cutthroat. There's still only 1 land, and so we're going to shuffle this away for another mulligan, going down to 6. Now we have an Island, Dungeon Geist, Island, Cloud Conceer, Air Elemental, and Island. This is not a great hand, primarily because we have a lot of really expensive cards. However, we will keep this because it's better than everything that we had before. So we'll put an Island on the bottom. Sorin draws 7. Sorin draws a Swamp, a Blood Burglar, Murder, Bloodthirsty Aerialist, Dread Presence, and Murder. This is not ideal because we do want more lands. However, we can probably survive with just 2 swamps and hopefully draw into the rest of the lands that we need. So we will keep this hand. Chandra draws 7. Chandra draws a Pack Mastiff, Pyroclastic Elemental, Ember Hauler, Mountain, Chandra Spitfire, Mountain. I think this is a very good first hand. 3 lands and multiple spells that we can cast and something to look forward to. Vivian draws 7. Vivian gets a Gnarlback Rhino, a Forest, Vivian's Crocodile, Forest, and Forest. I think this is actually too many lands to keep, even though we have a 3 and a 4 drop. So we're going to use our free mulligan. Vivian's second hand has a Growth Cycle, a Forest, a Greenwood Sentinel, a Barkhide Troll, a Forest, a Greenwood Sentinel, and an Aggressive Mammoth. I think this is a decent first hand because a lot of things just cost 2 mana, so we will keep this. Ajani draws a Plains, a Pacifism, Angel of Vitality, Dawning Angel, and a Plains. It's not a great hand, but I think it is a keepable one, so we will do so. Because this is multiplayer, we will all draw on the first turn. Yanling draws a Brineborn Cutthroat, and will play an Island, and Yanling will pass the turn. Sorin draws a Vampire of the Dire Moon. Sorin will play a Swamp. We'll tap that Swamp and play Vampire of the Dire Moon. It is a 1/1 Vampire with Death Touch and Lifelink. And then Sorin will pass the turn. Chandra draws a Mountain and will play the Mountain. And then Chandra will pass the turn. Vivian draws a Forest, and Vivian will play the Forest, and Vivian will pass the turn. Ajani draws a Moment of Heroism, and Ajani will play a Plains. And then Ajani will pass the turn. Yanling will draw for her second turn. She gets a Yanling's Harbinger. Yanling will play an Island. And because Yanling has this Brineborn Cutthroat with Flash, Yanling will just hold up the mana and will pass the turn. Sorin untaps. Sorin draws. Sorin gets a Swamp. Sorin will play the Swamp. Sorin will attack Vivian for 1 with the Vampire of the Dire Moon. Vivian cannot block, will take 1 and go to 19. Sorin gains 1 life to go to 21. And then Sorin will tap 2 mana and play the Blood Burglar. It is a 2/2 Vampire Rogue, and as long as it's your turn, Blood Burglar has lifelink. and then Soren will pass the turn. Chandra draws, gets a shock. Chandra will play a mountain. Chandra will tap both mountains, and Chandra will play a Pack Mastiff. It is a 2/2 hound, and for 1 in a red, each creature you control, named Pack Mastiff, gets +1/+0 until end of turn. And then Chandra will pass the turn. Vivian draws, gets a forest. Vivian will play the forest. Vivian will tap 2 mana and then play a Greenwood Sentinel. It is a 2/2 Elf Scout with Vigilance, and then Vivian will pass the turn. Ajani draws, gets a Plains. Ajani will play the Plains, and then Ajani will pass the turn. At the end of Ajani's turn, before we go into Yanling's turn, she will tap both islands and play the Brineborn Cutthroat. It is a 2/1 Merfolk Pirate with Flash, and whenever you cast a spell during an opponent's turn, put a +1/+1 counter on Brineborn Cutthroat. And then it will be Yanling's turn. She will untap. She'll draw. She gets a Celestial Messenger. Yanling will play an island. Then Yanling will tap 3 mana and play the Cloudkin Seer. It is a 2/1 Elemental Wizard with Flying, and when Cloudkin Seer enters the battlefield, draw a card. So we'll draw a card. Yanling draws an Unsummon, and Yanling will pass the turn. Soren untaps. Soren draws, gets a Vampire Opportunist. Soren will play a Swamp. Soren will tap all 3 mana and will play a Bloodthirsty Aerialist. It is a 2/3 Vampire Rogue with Flying, and whenever you gain life, put a +1/+1 counter on Bloodthirsty Aerialist. Soren will attack Ajani with the Vampire of the Dire Moon and the Blood Burglar, which both have lifelink, for 3 damage over 2 bodies. Ajani has no response. Will take 3 to go to 17. Soren will get 3 life to go to 24. And because Soren gained life twice from the 2 different creatures that attacked, Soren will get 2 +1/+1 counters on the Bloodthirsty Aerialist, making it a 4/5, and then Soren will pass the turn. Chandra untaps. Chandra draws. She gets a mountain. Chandra will play the mountain. Chandra will also attack Ajani with the Pack Mastiff. Ajani still can't block. Will take 2 and go to 15. Chandra will tap 3 mana and then play Chandra's Spitfire. It is a 1/3 Elemental with Flying, and whenever an opponent is dealt non-combat damage, Chandra's Spitfire gains +3/+0 until end of turn. Then Chandra will pass the turn. Vivian untaps. Vivian draws. She gets a forest. She'll play the forest. Vivian will spend 2 mana and play the Barkhide Troll. It is a 2/2 Troll, and Barkhide Troll enters the battlefield with +1/+1 counter on it. And for 1, you can remove a +1/+1 counter from Barkhide Troll. Barkhide Troll gains hexproof until end of turn. And then Vivian will pass the turn. Ajani draws, gets a Plains. Ajani will play the Plains. Ajani will spend 2 mana to cast Pacifism on the Bloodthirsty Aerialist. It is an enchantment aura that says enchant creature. Enchanted creature can't attack or block. Bloodthirsty Aerialist is pacified. Then Ajani will pass the turn. Yanling untaps. Yanling draws, gets a Riddle Master Sphinx. Yanling will attack Vivian with the Cloudkin Seer for 2. Vivian cannot block, will take 2 and go to 17. And Yanling will pass the turn. Soren untaps. Soren draws a Swamp. Soren will play the Swamp. Soren will attack Ajani with the Blood Burglar for 2. Ajani cannot block, will take 2 and go to 13. Soren will gain 2 life and go to 26. And because we gain life, the Aerialist will gain another counter. And then Soren will tap 4 mana and play the Dread Presence. It is a 3/3 Nightmare. Whenever a swamp enters a battlefield under your control, choose 1, you draw a card and lose 1 life. Or Dread Presence deals 2 damage to any target and you gain 2 life. And Soren will pass the turn. Chandra untaps. Chandra draws. She gets a mountain. She'll play a mountain. Chandra will attack Ajani with the Spitfire and the Pack Mastiff for 3. Ajani takes 3 and goes to 10. Second main, Chandra will tap 2 and then will play the Ember Hauler. It is a 2/2 Goblin, and for 1, you can sacrifice Ember Hauler. It deals 2 damage to any target. Then Chandra will pass the turn. Vivian untaps. Vivian draws. She gets a forest. She'll play the forest. Vivian will spend 2 mana and play the Greenwood Sentinel. Vivian will attack Chandra with the Greenwood Sentinel, and then will attack Yanling with the Barkhide Troll. Yanling will decline to block and take 3 and go to 17. Chandra will spend 1 mana and cast Shock, targeting the Greenwood Sentinel for 2 damage. In response, Vivian will tap 2 mana and cast Growth Cycle, targeting the Greenwood Sentinel, giving it +3/+3, making it a 5/5. So the Sentinel survives the 2 damage and hits Chandra for 5. Chandra takes 5 and goes to 15, and Vivian will pass the turn. Ajani untaps. Ajani draws, gets another Plains, will play the Plains. Ajani will spend 3 mana and play Angel of Vitality. It is a 2/2 Angel with flying. If you would gain life, you gain that much life +1 instead. Angel of Vitality gets +2/+2 as long as you have 5 or more life. And Ajani will pass the turn. Yanling untaps. Yanling draws. She gets an island. She'll play the island. Yanling will attack Chandra with the Cloudkin Seer. Chandra cannot block, will take 2 and go to 13. Yanling will follow up by tapping all the islands and then casting Dungeon Geists. It is a 3/3 spirit and has flying, and when Dungeon Geist enters the battlefield, tap target creature an opponent controls. That creature doesn't untap during its controller's untapped step for as long as you control Dungeon Geists. We'll target the Chandra Spitfire so that it remains tapped, and then Yanling will pass the turn. Sorin untaps. Sorin draws, gets a Savage Gorger. Sorin will pay 3 mana and cast Savage Gorger. It is a 1/1 vampire with flying. At the beginning of your end step, if an opponent lost life this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on Savage Gorger. And then Sorin will attack Ajani with the Blood Burglar again. Ajani will take 2 and go to 8. Sorin will gain 2 more life and go to 28. And because Sorin gained life, the Bloodthirsty Aerialist will get another counter. The Savage Gorger will also get a counter because an opponent has lost life. And then Sorin will pass the turn. Chandra untaps. The Spitfire does not untap. Chandra draws. Chandra gets a mountain. Chandra will play the mountain. And then Chandra will attack Ajani with the Pack Mastiff. Ajani will decline to block and will take 2 and go to 6. Chandra will spend 5 and cast Pyroclastic Elemental. It is a 5/4 elemental, and for 1 red, Pyroclastic Elemental deals 1 damage to target player, and Chandra will pass the turn. Vivian untaps. Vivian draws. She gets a forest. She'll play a forest. Vivian will attack Yanling with the Barkhide Troll. Yanling will decline to block and take 3 to go to 14, and Vivian will pass the turn. Oh, Vivian cannot attack Chandra, so we are going to undo that. Chandra will undo that, get the 5 life back, return the shock to her hand, and we'll return the Growth Cycle to Vivian's hand. That was an error, and then Vivian will pass the turn. Ajani untaps. Ajani draws, gets another Plains. Ajani's flooding, he'll play the Plains, and then Ajani will tap all 5 mana and cast the Dawning Angel. It is a 3/2 Angel with flying. When Dawning Angel enters the battlefield, you gain 4 life. Because of Angel of Vitality, we'll gain 5 life and go back up to 11. And then Ajani will pass the turn. Yanling untaps. Yanling draws, gets an island. Yanling will play the island. Yanling will attack Vivian for 2 with the Cloudkin Seer, and will attack Chandra for 3 with the Dungeon Geists. Chandra has no response, will take 3 and go to 15. Vivian can't block, will take 2 and go to 15. Then Yanling will tap everything and cast the Air Elemental. It is a 4/4 elemental with flying. And then Yanling will pass the turn. Sorin untaps. Sorin draws. Gets another Savage Gorger. Sorin will attack Ajani with the Savage Gorger and the Blood Burglar. Ajani will offer a trade with the Angel of Vitality to the Blood Gorger. Sorin accepts the trade. They will both die. And Ajani will take 2 from the Blood Burglar to go to 9. Sorin loses the Savage Gorger. Will gain 2 life to go to 30. Then Sorin will tap 3 mana and cast another Savage Gorger. And then at the end of the turn, it'll get a +1/+1 counter. And then Sorin will pass the turn. Chandra untaps. Chandra draws. Gets a Scorch Spitter. Chandra will play a mountain. Chandra will attack Ajani with the Pyroclastic Elemental for 5. Ajani will offer a chump with the Dawning Angel. The Dawning Angel dies. Chandra will tap 1 mana and play the Scorch Spitter. And Chandra will pass the turn. Vivian untaps. Vivian draws. Vivian gets a Growth Cycle. Vivian will play a Forest. Vivian will attack Sorin with a Greenwood Sentinel. Sorin is totally comfortable with taking 2 damage and will go down to 28. Vivian will tap all of the mana and then play an aggressive Mammoth. It is an 8/8 elephant with trample, and other creatures you control have trample. Ajani untaps. Ajani draws. Gets a Savannah Sage. Ajani will play a Plains. Will tap 2 mana and play a Savannah Sage. It is a 2/2 cat cleric. When Savannah Sage enters the battlefield, you gain 2 life. Get 2 life to go back up to 11. And Ajani will pass the turn. Yunling will untap. Yunling will draw. She gets an island. Yunling will play the island. Yunling will spend 6 mana and cast the Riddlemaster Sphinx. It is a 5/5 Sphinx with flying, and when Riddlemaster Sphinx enters the battlefield, you may return target creature an opponent controls to its owner's hand. We'll target the aggressive Mammoth. The Mammoth is returned to Vivian's hand. Yunling will attack Vivian with the Dungeon Geists, and Chandra with the Cloud Conceer, and Vivian again with the Air Elemental. Chandra will take 2 and go to 13. Vivian will take 5 and go to 10, and Yunling will pass the turn. Sorin untaps. Sorin draws. Gets a Vampire of the Dire Moon. Sorin will attack Ajani with the Savage Gorger, the Blood Burglar. Ajani will block the Blood Burglar with the Savannah Sage, and then will cast Moment of Heroism, targeting the Savannah Sage, making it a 4/4 with lifelink. In response, Sorin will tap 3 mana and cast Murder, targeting the Savannah Sage, and that is an instant. It says destroy target creature. Ajani's Savannah Sage dies, and Ajani will take 2 damage from the Gorger to go down to 9. Sorin will tap 1 mana and play another Vampire of the Dire Moon, and because Ajani lost life at the end of this turn, the Gorger will get another +1/+1 counter, making it a 3/3, and then Sorin will pass the turn. At the end of Sorin's turn, Chandra will tap 3 mana and use Pyroclastic Elemental's ability to deal 1 damage to Ajani. Ajani takes 1, goes to 8. Chandra untaps. Chandra draws. Gets a Chandra Spitfire. Chandra will play a Mountain. Chandra will attack Ajani with the Pyroclastic Elemental, the Pack Mastiff, the Scorch Spitter. The Scorch Spitter trigger hits Ajani for 1, taking him to 7, and then the remaining creatures hit him for 8, finishing him off. Ajani dies. Pacifism falls off the Bloodthirsty Aerialist as well. Chandra spends 3 and casts the Chandra Spitfire, and then Chandra will pass the turn. Vivian then taps. Vivian draws. Gets a Forest. Vivian will play the Forest. Vivian will spend all the mana to cast the aggressive Mammoth again. It is the 8/8, and Vivian will pass the turn. Yunling untaps. Yunling draws. She gets a Yunling's Harbinger. Yunling attacks Vivian with Cloud Conceer, and Chandra with the Air Elemental. Chandra will spend 2 mana to sack the Ember Hauler to do 2 damage to the Air Elemental, and will also cast Shock to do 2 damage to the Air Elemental. Yunling will lose the Air Elemental. Vivian can't block, will take 2 and go to 8. Yunling will spend 5 and cast Yunling's Harbinger. It is a 2/4 bird with flying. When Yunling's Harbinger enters the battlefield, you may search your library and or graveyard for a card named Mu Yunling Celestial Wind. Reveal it and put it into your hand. If you search your library this way, shuffle it. We'll search for the card. There it is. We'll put it into our hand. We'll shuffle. And Yunling will pass the turn. Sorin untaps. Sorin draws. Sorin gets a Bloodthirsty Aerialist. Sorin will spend 3 mana and cast Murder, targeting the aggressive Mammoth. The aggressive Mammoth dies. Sorin will attack Vivian with the Bloodthirsty Aerialist, the Savage Gorger, and 1 Vampire of the Dire Moon. Vivian will trade 1 Greenwood Sentinel for the Vampire of the Dire Moon and will take 9 damage from the flying creatures to die. And with that, Soren wins the game because Soren has defeated his 2 opposing colors in Ajani and Vivian. This was not a hard game for Soren. He got off to a very good start, and even though pinched on mana, he just had all the right cards to work with Chandra to finish Ajani off and then finish off Vivian with Yunling's help. So that was the game. If I made any rules or gameplay errors that I didn't catch, let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button. If you'd like to see more such videos, hit subscribe. I'll be back taking these 5 decks up against the Face the Hydra challenge deck from Theros next. Until then, this was Refresh, and thanks for watching.